John Arms, welcome to the show, Death of a Workaholic. How are you doing today?
I am lovely. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here. I'm so glad, Jenny, you asked me to be on this because it's important subject matter for the planet, for the whole world. So I'm loving this. I can't wait to get into this conversation.
That's awesome because you have been a champion for the post-workaholic life for so very long. And I can't wait to talk about that as we get later into your journey. But let's start with where it all began in 1991.
1991. That's probably, what would we call that? It's probably the height of grunge in America. That's when I started my career. And as I often say, I refer to my, the people like to hide their age. I like to bring it out into the light. I think age age equals wisdom, and that's extremely valuable. We have this bad habit in our status quo work culture to go, oh, age equals bad, which is wrong. And so I love going back to my beginning. So I did start my career, and you know what? I started in a tough space. When I started, I graduated from the University of Minnesota. I'm a Gopher, and with a degree in journalism and marketing. And at that time, it was just cutthroat. Like, it was the height of advertising arrogance and award shows and judging and criticism. And it was hard to feel good about yourself. So much pressure. And on top of that, there were hardly any jobs. So when I entered the workforce in my beginnings, it was hard. It was hard. And I think that probably caused me to learn some things and adopt some habits that later on turned into workaholism.
Okay. And what were some of those habits?
Well, so when you're in a high pressure environment, when there's a lot of judging, which is advertising, when there's a lot of criticism, when there's a lot of, just intense personalities, and I'm not saying they're not in advertising, but very much collected and aggregated in that market, you tend to go, the expectation is to work all night. We got a presentation tomorrow. You're not sleeping until the presentation. We're going to travel. So say goodbye to your family because it is all in on this client, on this pitch, on this moment that could be a big win for us for recognition. And you sacrifice everything for that. Not a good thing. So that is, and it's not just me, right? The 90s and late 80s were full of that, like all in on the company's goals, no prisoners, and those are bad habits. Those are not good habits. Mm-hmm. I later found out.
Now I want to know when you found out, John.
So sort of along the way, right? You bump around in life and go, maybe that wasn't so great. I mean, I will tell you, I was 33 years old when I had my first panic attack. Oh. And that was not good. And anxiety is still it's the demon on the shoulder that a lot of us have. I have it, and I'm super open about it because there's stigmas about it. But I think I developed it from work. I really do. And how much pressure can you take? So I went through life, and I have the benefit of having a lovely support system. And I'm very much into the outdoors. And so I like to go hiking and canoeing and paddling and fishing and hunting. Well, when you're in the outdoors, you're very, very balanced and you have time. When you're living that, I need to be on water. I need to be in the sun. I need my vitamin D. Well, that's observation time. So you sort of look back and go, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing that? It's just intense. It's pushing my spirit in directions I don't want it to go. So along the way of living that intense advertising culture and then building it myself, I started a company in 2004. But by that time, I decided I'm not going to run that company the way the industry had run things for decades before. So along the way, I learned it. And then when I went independent and started this fractional thing, well, that's a whole different thing, but that is part of how I learned it too. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So you said like 4 amazing things in the last few minutes. So number one, I mean, of course, John. Number one, I want to pause and talk about the beauty of age because we just don't talk about it enough. I am halfway in the middle. I'm turning 40 this year. So this is the year that
Okay.
we get to reflect on being the halfway point.
Yeah.
And it is one thing I've noticed is that like the first half of life, we're assimilating all this information and knowledge, but we don't really get to step back and see how all the puzzle pieces fit until after we've got a few gray hairs, um,
Yeah.
proverbially.
Yeah. Didn't you recommend the book From Strength to Strength to me?
I
Wasn't it?
did.
Yeah. And so what is it? It's fluid learning and then crystallized. What are those two?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. So for all of you guys listening, this is one of my favorite books on this topic is Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks that John's just mentioning now. And he talks about the transition between in your early career, how it's all about fluid intelligence, where you're gaining knowledge, you're creating breakthroughs. It's all like assimilating and amassing these new
Mhm.
ideas and insights. And then there's a point where our brains hit this peak performance stage, and they, in that particular regards, and they move into a different type of
Yeah.
performance, which is crystallized intelligence. And we start to be able to connect the things that are meaningful and transpose and share them in a more valid, meaningful way for others. And so we become better teachers, we become better mentors, we become better advisors, we become better
Mhm.
coaches. And
Yeah.
so really rolling with it as you move through your career is the single best way to find
Yeah.
success and meaning your whole life.
It's a great read and it's a great concept, and it's something that it was very cathartic for me.
Mhm.
I did the audiobook version of
Me
that.
too. He's got
Yeah.
such a great reading voice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Was that him actually reading as
I
well?
think so. I have to double
Oh,
check that now. I'll double
yeah.
check that before I publish the
Yeah.
podcast, but I'm pretty sure it was him narrating.
Yeah. I mean, age it is high time we recognize age is a beautiful thing. It
Mhm.
is glorious. It is loaded with gifts and prosperity and opportunity. And all we got to do is pull it back out into the light. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's also why sometimes workaholism is okay when you're younger and it becomes not okay when you're older because
Right.
you're amassing this number of experiences. And then at some
Mhm.
point, that desire to work gets in your way. And so it's figuring out how
Mhm.
to make the switch and when to make the switch so it doesn't become your second great point, which is a panic attack. I want to like just thank you
Yeah.
for like raising that. I have talked to so many people who have had that. I was just researching the other day, 33%. I think roughly, I'd have to double check my numbers of
Mhm.
workaholics have anxiety versus 12% roughly of the general population. Like
Yeah.
it is definitely, there is a link there. It is tied. And I want to just blow the top off and say,
Yeah.
that anxiety can be really good for us because it gets us rolling and moving and
Yeah.
doing these amazing things. But it also at some point becomes the thing that can take us down. So,
It is very clinical in a lot of ways. I call it the bear is
oh,
the way I look at anxiety is and it goes back to, anxiety is a result of too much adrenaline
mm-hmm.
and releasing at times that are middle of the night. Why do you need your adrenaline, at Mach 10, right?
Yeah.
Why is that, And then what does it have you do when it is going at Mach 10, right? Well, you don't need it, but what the clinicians will say is well, for 300,000 years that mankind has been on this planet, we've needed to run away from bears and
Mhm.
saber-toothed tigers. We needed that adrenaline to survive. Well, we're not running away from bears anymore. So that
Mhm.
adrenaline's building up. It's got no place to go. And it comes out as anxiety. That's part of it. That's not all of it, but that's part of
Yeah.
it. So in my own little mind, when I go work out, when I'm reflecting, when I'm journaling, when I'm writing, I'm like, I'm staying in front of the bear. This helps me
Yeah.
control that anxiety and stay in front of the bear. So the bear and I are friends. He's eventually going to get me, but it's always behind me. Run away from the
I
bear.
love it. I love it. I love it. A whole different way of looking at outrunning the bear because that
That's
is
right.
such a great way of looking at anxiety. It's like you're running after something, you're chasing something. So why not
Mhm.
channel it differently in a more therapeutic calm
Totally.
capacity? Love
Totally.
that.
Yeah.
And outdoors, I mean, the ability to helicopter back and see things clearly, that sounds
Yeah.
like a great solution for you. So did you find the outdoors before your panic attack or was it after and did it help you work through the other side?
It's in my DNA. So my family, we're water people. We love fishing and boating and that sort of stuff. So from a young child, I was fishing off the end of a dock probably shortly after I could walk. I was just wired that way, which isn't so much about the fishing, right? It's just like you're there over water, one of most I mean, a primary earth element that we cannot survive without, and you're immersed in it. You're in the sun. So this connection to nature is it's in all of us. I had an early awareness of it, and I always pursued it.
I love that.
And I still do. I have to be in nature for a half hour each day if I'm going to have a good day.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So then I lean into it, right? Like, yeah, well, half hour is not enough. I need a, but it's a balancing thing. And as it relates to workaholism and it relates to career and all that, it gives us perspective. It's that bit of beautiful moment when I was workaholic-ing is, well, I'm going to grind through this thing and then I'm going to get to the next thing. And because I'm grinding, I'm not going to do a really good quality job, but I'm going to check it off the list. And then I'm going to do that throughout the day. And my moments to observe and pause and reflect, which allow me to bring value into my work, are not there. Immersing in nature, it is built in.
Yeah.
There's some wonderful research that's been done on Native American cultures and even ancient cultures where they talk about, listen, they were running from the bear, but they weren't grinding through days like we do now in modern society. Very much time for spirituality, a ton of time for community, very connected to nature. Those were beautiful societies, and I think they had it right. And I think we can learn a lot from those societies.
So what are the phases that you went through then? You went through this, I'm going to do the grind in the advertising world. Something clicked and you kind of moved into, I'm going to start my own agency and do this differently. And then something clicked and you moved fractional and said, okay, now I'm really going to do this differently. So what were the phases that kept you ahead of the bear?
Ahead of the bear. So I think there's always in my family, there's an entrepreneurial thing. My dad was his own business person, and a lot of my family, I think all my brothers most of my family are independent business people. So, I think it's partly in our DNA, but, when I was growing up in that hard advertising agency industry in 2004, I'm like, I think I have an idea for this that is really nice. It was a more digital centric company. So I think in many ways I was still workaholicing, right? I'm like, I can build a new thing. And I can take what advertising is and make it better. I mean, that's big, high-reaching stuff. And I reached for it and found myself in the grind just building that up. The thing that led me to where I am now is, listen, you have to really find joy in what you do. And I don't know if I find joy in empire building, either building somebody else's empire or building my own empire. I find joy in impact. I find joy in, this is what I think I got right about my company is we just really took care of our people. Like, yep, it's the empire will come, but the people, right? Pay them fantastic. Give them all the space they need. Don't put your thumb on top. All those bad lessons I learned, I was able to deploy. And our company wasn't a big giant empire, but to this day, people talk about that was a very wonderful place to work. That's impact, right? We made people's lives positive. But that wasn't enough for me, right? It was still kind of an empire in a lot of ways. So finally in 2018, I'm like, I'm done. And I want to go back to my entrepreneurial roots. I sort of advanced or evolved my thinking on what work is and what it should be for society. Based on a couple things that are very, as my high school guidance teacher said, you have a strong vein for justice and social justice. And which means I don't like seeing injustice. It really bugs the crap out of me. And so I thought, well, what about a life built on self-determination and freedom and choice? What can that look like? And growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s of the corporate world, freedom, choice, self-determination, not really in the mix. For the most part, people were working for somebody else on their vision to advance their cause. But what about ourselves? So I thought, well, we can do that. We can do that. We can be independent. We can be free. We can have more choice. Fast forward now, it's called fractional.
So was there a period when you went into fractional that you went back to kind of some of those workaholic tendencies before you found your way out? Or was it a really clean break for you?
It was a pretty clean break. Yep. Once I decided that, quality of life and balance is the answer to happiness,
Mhm.
and freedom and choice and self-determination were in the mix. I really avoided workaholism, and I think it changed, right? Like when you find like say you're an artist, right? And you find immense passion in drawing or
Mhm.
painting. Well, 10 hours might go by where you don't even know you're doing anything, but you're so in love with the process. Well, I don't really think that's workaholism. That's
Mhm.
actually healthy expression. I write a ton, right? And I get in the writing groove and I'm like, out it flows. That's healthy. It feeds the soul.
Yeah,
And there's impact on the other side of it. So I think there's a difference between working a lot and working hard and workaholism.
I
You
agree.
know way more on that than I would. So I
No,
often
no, no, no. You're also an expert, John. So, but yes, there is a working with your natural energy flow is
Mhm.
incredibly important. And one of the things I have learned in the last, I would say year or two, actually, so this is a relatively new learning, is how to combine being focused and having priorities that keep you from, stretching yourself all over the place, creating that frantic adrenaline rush that, causes you to need
Mhm.
to
Run from the
run out.
bear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to avoid some of that by creating these really strong priorities, but also having some flex within them to go with where your brain wants to go on a day by day basis and really being aware of what are truly hard deadlines
Mhm.
versus, if I'm feeling more in a drawing mood that day, I'm going to be drawing because I draw. It's part of my role, my work, right? But
Yeah.
not every day do I feel like writing. Sometimes I feel like drawing. So I can work with that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you go to your number 2 or 3 priority and do it because it's there, it's feeling your soul, it's present. Just go with it, man. Drive, jump on that train and drive.
Isn't it something? It's some of these old adages in the world, like what you say no to is as important, or if not more than what you say yes to. So if you have the choice to check 9 more things off your list or paint in a 3-hour window, right? I think the world's better if you paint.
Mhm.
I think your family's better. I think your community's better because you just put a whole lot of joy in. So you're sending vibes out into the universe that are very positive if you get joy in that. And I think society's better when we lean into those places that give us joy and our natural energies.
Yeah, I love that. So you talked a little bit about how you found joy and impact. How
Mhm.
did you continue that definite or continue or evolve that definition of impact so that it suited you in this life that also reflected and honored your own needs?
Good question. So it came down to, like, early on, the impact was pretty clear.
Mhm.
And it was more around, I think there's a different business structure and career structure that can work for more people than what we currently have. And
Mhm.
that felt good, right? A lot of people like, I am really good at what I do. It doesn't fit in a corporate bucket anymore. Where does it need to go? Like just providing relief to people who were stuck with
Yeah.
Voyager and Fractional was great first impact.
Mhm.
But it evolved to, as we thought about that, and what that meant, in terms of training people to do that and providing services to help them, and even what the things we do today. Well, there's social implications, there's cultural implications, there's far greater impact than just the relief from maybe an old pressure-filled life into a more fulfilling, self-determined life. So it wasn't until about 2 years into Voyager, which is just about when the pandemic started, by the way. So that was a interesting moment in time, that I really realized there's more to this than just providing relief. It is direction for people, and that it is forward motion for our society. So it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, on its own from a mission standpoint. Jason and I, we drove it, but what this thing does, what this fractional thing does, what Voyager does for people is continues to teach us lessons about what freedom, choice, and self-determination can do for who we are as a people.
And you talk about white space and the importance of having that in your life and in your
Yeah.
work. What
Mhm.
role did that play in this evolution process? Like, where did your biggest ideas come from? Where
Oh, they always come from the white space.
don't
You know,
they?
they really do. The biggest ideas are not the result of a whiteboard and too much coffee and sweat and grind. That
Mhm.
is not where great ideas come from, at least for me and Jason, my partner in Voyager. It comes from, we often call, we'll have every Friday we have a meeting and we'll talk about things, right? And then we go, now we're going to soak. Just it needs to
Mhm.
soak. Don't push it, don't shove it, don't try to force it. Let it soak. And then we don't come back for another week.
I
Soak
love it.
times, white space is what gives ideas, I think maybe even to take some energy on their own. So, which is interesting because in our training and all the Voyager training on how to do fractional, you know, how to do it, how to sustain it, white space is built into the program. You know,
Mhm.
in fractional, it should be about a 25-hour week.
Yes.
There should be plenty of white space to get perspective. It makes you more effective as a guide, as a direction provider, as a strategic thinker. That's what fractional people do. White space is critical. It's critical.
I love that. And so you are the fractional expert. That's one of the things I
So they
love
tell
about
me.
talking to you. So how did you make the leap? And what for people out there thinking about making the leap themselves, what would you recommend?
Well, learning, you know, you have to learn, you know, the world is changing. You have to look at the cues. You have to learn as the world changes around us. I mean, I can't imagine a time since maybe the Great Depression that we've had so much change and oh, everything all in one short period of time. So you have to go with that and you have to learn, right? Is the world forward is not the same as the world backward. That's consistent throughout history. So you have to open your eyes and learn and sort of get out of those comfortable spots that you thought were nice, safe places.
Mhm.
For the people we help, is they were pretty, a lot of people were pretty comfortable. They had a great job at a big Fortune 500 company. Everything was great until it wasn't. And when it wasn't, it was bad. Like you lost all your money, you got no, you know, everything stops, right? The whole thing stops. But it's not just the money, right? Like the reason you get, you know, the impact you can make and the, you know, yes, supporting your family and all of that. But I think the absence a lot of people felt is like, I'm no longer really wanted. I
Mhm.
don't have a sense of belonging anymore when you're laid off, right? So where does that go? Because you're no less awesome. You're as awesome the day after you were laid off as the day before, probably even more so because you've been released from a lot of things, but you don't feel that way. So anyway, you have to learn, you have to understand, you know, what your options are. You can go get a new job. Most people who come into fractional, who come into Voyager, like, I don't want a repeat of what I had.
Mhm.
That did not serve me. It did not serve my family. It all stopped. So it did not even serve me economically. People are sort of having an awakening right now, like, yeah, that wasn't nearly as secure as I thought.
Mhm.
But it's been that way since 1950. So, you know, repetition holds a lot of power in our world.
It does.
Mhm.
And you made a really good comment in there about the and I'm not gonna word this right, so pardon my grabbing for words.
Mhm.
But you talked about how there's this there's this need for belonging.
Mhm.
And I want to pause there because what I've noticed is that a lot of times this anxiety that's created through this like go 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 adrenaline
Mhm.
pumping stuff from a lot of people I talk to, there's usually two underlying components. Either some form of financial security they're pursuing, right?
Mhm.
I'm looking for stability that way and maybe they didn't
Mhm.
have it when they were younger. And
Mhm.
the other is a performance, a desire to perform at a certain level. Now, if we
Mhm.
unpack that desire, there's usually some root causes, right? Why do we feel the need to perform? There's going to be some reason why we feel the
Mhm.
need to perform.
Yeah.
So, what were some of those things in your journey? What were some of those underlying desires
Mhm.
that drove or informed your early workaholism that you had to shift in order to embrace this new reality?
Oh boy. So I mean, you get into some really interesting psychological territory with that, which is fascinating to me, is early on, yes, you're seeking financial, help, right? It's like the harder I work, the more money I can earn.
Mhm.
The harder I work, looking for some safety, right? If I work harder than the person in the cubicle next to me, I am more firm at this place. So there's some
Mhm.
very practical things, whether those are right or wrong or good or bad. I'm not
Mhm.
judging any of it.
Mhm.
It just was. And in many
Mhm.
ways, it still is. But there's other things, right? You're seeking approval. Look
Mhm.
at me, look how hard I work. I mean, just think about are you going to stay till midnight? The judgment that happens in the workforce is terrible. Shame. I wrote about shame this week. Like, it's just the shame if you didn't work, if you didn't sacrifice your health and your family, there's some shame associated with it. So there's a lot of stuff in between the ears other than the practical pursuit of, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like
Mhm.
food, I need shelter, those things, like, well, you kind of secure that with your first job for the most part. Then it comes with the keeping up with the Josens, as there's some competitive nature of, I want to beat the next guy, and a lot of psychological stuff comes in. It starts to spin together in a wash cycle, and it gets more and more tied up. And I don't think it's necessarily healthy for everybody. So I was in that cycle for a long time, and I decided to leave it because I didn't think it was healthy.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, figuring out what's at the root of why we have, I love the picture you use, the wash cycle. It sometimes is hard to
Mhm.
untangle some of the different needs that we're trying to fill at some point, unless you back to the space thing, stops, step back,
Yeah.
it's space. Figure
Well,
out what do you need to still carry forward, what is relevant? Because often it's really just I need a sense of connection, a sense of belonging, sense of
yeah,
meaning.
I'm reading Brené Brown's, or is it Brené Brown, Daring Greatly right now,
Oh
and
yeah, great book.
a great book, and she, she's obviously researches all of this stuff, and she's saying, listen, we're hardwired for connecting. It's
Mhm.
in we're hardwired for it, right? And I'm still unpacking all this stuff, by the way. I don't have answers, but I just have viewpoints. But I'm unpacking it, and I'm like, so if we're hardwired for connecting, yep, that's right. Then what does that what kind of connecting are we hardwired to, or will we just seek whatever connection is available for us?
Mhm.
So if we're hardwired for connecting and community and a sense of belonging, does that mean we'll take the unhealthy and the healthy? So, for example, let's think about alcoholism
Mhm.
and all of that. Like, if we're hardwired for connecting, a lot of people will connect around alcohol and an
Yeah.
alcohol abuse cycle.
Yeah.
That's connecting. That's bad hardwiring. It's connecting, but it's
Mhm.
connecting around a negative force and negative energy. So, even though we're hardwired for connecting, we have to find where it's positive and where it's negative. Like, I'd much rather be hardwired for and spend my time connecting in a giving way, in
Mhm.
ways that help others, in a way that's physically and mentally healthy. I find her writing super interesting because we are hardwired for connecting, but the work comes in where are you going to, where is that energy, that hardwired energy? Where should it go? I think we all have a
Yeah.
good idea where it needs to go.
I love it. And once again, all that takes white space. I'm gonna keep
It
coming
does,
back to
there was,
that.
this week there was an interesting story about that, about Judge Clarence Thomas and a supporter, and there's all this dialogue about the money that he took and the vacations and all that. And one of the people on the news said, people with power love to hang around people with power. And I thought about that, and I'm like, that's interesting. They're hardwired to connect, right?
Mhm.
In a certain thing. Well, in that case, it didn't work out so great, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, you're doing some illegal stuff. You're supposed to be an objective judge. You're not, but he's kind of following his hardwired for connectivity, but maybe not down the right path.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, interesting. Super. We should
It's
get
all,
Brene on
yeah, it
the
was
podcast.
so interesting, so interesting. And another, for those of you that want to kind of really dig into the white space, another recommended read, David Rock's Your Brain at Work, is a great book that talks about how our brain generates insight, the importance of space in that process, what's
Mhm.
happening in our all of our different brain waves. But
Mhm.
really simplified it, your brain has to be, your executive functioning has to be quiet for you to grab onto insights. They're
That's it.
a layer deeper. And so the more that we're thinking and running a task list in our head, the less we're able to capture it. So white space is critically important in really unpacking all of this stuff and moving forward in this optimal way that you're talking about, John, and staying ahead of the bear?
My big cathartic moment in the last 6 months.
Mm.
Well, because I think about this a lot, and I thought, there's a better way to go through each day. And through the checklist, and a checklist with tasks, right? So I started to contemplate the day as an ecosystem, not a list, not even chronological.
Mm-hmm.
So, which to a lot of people who index wherever you're on Strengths Finders, that might blow some people's minds, right? Like, wait a minute, it has to be chronological. But so what I ended up doing is I drew a circle, and that's the sun, and I drew rays of the sun. And my day, the way I organize my day is there's certain things that at the end of the day, did I do those things? Did I read? Did I exercise? Did I go outdoors? Most of them are around white space activities, right? Every day I want to solve one big client problem. Every day I want to do one big thing to lead the fractional movement, right? But I don't have in my sun with all of its spokes, I don't have like what do. It's an ecosystem of more thoughtful activity, less that's more thoughtful. And that has been an absolute game changer for me.
Well, I love the way you look at it, because it becomes a non-linear. It's still a way to do activity, but because it's non-linear, we can tap into a broader cross section of our brain.
Yeah.
Versus kind of locking ourselves in and
Right.
getting into the forest. We can actually take a step back and say, at a macro level, are all these elements folding into my day? Well, then I'm moving forward my vision for the world and for myself.
Yep. One thing I have to do each day is one give. I have to do a give. I fill my soul by helping others. So, and that can manifest in a lot of ways. I can volunteer. Somebody who's struggling with their business, I can help. You can always find a give. I don't have a scheduled give, right? But as I go throughout the day, I'm like, what's my give opportunity here? So
that.
It's really changed the way I look at it.
What a great way to look at things. All right. So here's the part, John, where I quickly summarize what I think I heard your tips and your roadmap is. So you get to tell me how right or wrong I am. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. So number one, I heard get outdoors, get some space, see perspective.
Yep.
It really helps you stay. I love this phrase, stay ahead of the bear so you don't have to outrun it.
Stay ahead of the bear.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Find joy and impact. So there's a lot of things that we can find that a lot of talk tracks we have, but if we can just find joy and impact, it makes it easier to do amazing work and really kind of get clarity on our priorities.
Yes, totally.
Make sure you're doing work that feeds your soul. So I heard a lot of that. Like, let's make sure that the stuff we're doing is actually continuing to fuel that joy, which then goes out into the world, makes our lives better, our connections better, makes the world a better place. And I love this. Let it soak. Your biggest ideas come from the soak time. So everybody, you heard it from John, let it soak.
Let it soak. Let it soak. Absolutely. Boy, you captured a lot of good stuff there. I can't believe I said all those things.
You're pretty brilliant, John. You say lots of brilliant things. You make it easy.
My kids don't agree. My kids don't agree.
My kids don't agree either. They're teenagers, right? That's kind of part of it.
Right. Someday they'll realize our brilliance.
Oh, yes. Maybe someday we'll all realize our own brilliance too.
That's right. Yeah. We need to work on it.
A little bit of what that's here too. So what final parting words of wisdom, John, do you have for this awesome group listening today?
Yeah, I guess my parting words is, every day is a gift. Every day tomorrow is not guaranteed. And that means take a moment to just really be grateful for that and really think about how you want it to go. When you do that, you'll probably have decide, I need more white space. I need more soak time. I need more opportunity to give and help others. That's probably how most of us want our days to go. And if tomorrow's not guaranteed, how wonderful is it to just think about it that way? So my advice is recognize that every day is a gift. It is not guaranteed. And so you get to choose what you want that gift to be.
I love that. And I'm so honored that you chose to be here with me. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. I hope I can do it again, and I hope it helps your community.
Oh, I'm sure it will. So everybody, you guys need to connect with John. John heads up Voyager U, among other things. He's a former CEO and workaholic And now he spends his time inspiring others to find balance, joy, health, and prosperity in a decidedly unworkaholic manner. Fractional.
That's me.
I love it.